The Alberta government has announced new funding for the Vermilion-Lloydminster-Wainwright constituency, which will help to revitalize local infrastructure projects.
It's all stuff we need to just go on with our daily lives.
A showing of gratitude from local MLA Garth Rosewell after the Alberta government announced over $2.9 million in capital funding for municipalities in the Vermilion-Lloydminster-Wainwright constituency.
Part of my role with the municipalities is when I'm talking to them is try to get a handle on what the highest priorities are. And then once I know that, then I can help them in any way I can through the various ministries that we have to work through.
Funds from the Canada Community Building Grants have been dispersed between 7 different areas of focus. $1 million has been allocated towards water, wastewater, and road infrastructure in Lloydminster. $540,000 will go towards the rehabilitation of Township Road in the County of Vermilion, and $680,000 will fund road and sidewalk projects in Wainwright.
Essentials to living a normal life, and they have to maintain it and keep them in good shape. And when it's not, that's when you see the problems. And you always know your municipality is doing a good job when things are going smooth and there's not that many problems that you're running into.
A spokesperson with the City of Lloydminster was able to confirm that the funds have been received, though they were unavailable for further comment. The Lloydminster Airport will soon be adding some new pieces of maintenance equipment. City Council was updated on the vendor selection for a new grader and snowplow truck for the airport. Both projects will be funded through the Airport Capital Assistance Program grant, with the city set to receive over $800,000. It's not the only recent investment coming to the city's airport, as the tarmac has seen upgrades and new signs will also be going up soon.
We've invested large dollars, which is majority grant money from ACAP, into the actual tarmac and into the strips, the airstrips there. And now we're adding a secondary piece of equipment. We already had the snowplow that's out there to take care of the runway, but now we're going to be able to add a grader to that.
City administration says the new equipment is needed to ensure the airport runs efficiently and is well maintained. Councillor Aaron Buckingham added that it will help make the airport a hub for the community and in the future.
We build things like the new event arena. The exhibition continues to grow and host major events. Connectivity to Lloydminster is key. Having that airport service there is an absolute necessity if we're going to have sustained and continued growth and diversification, both in the business community and our events and hosting capabilities.
Grace United Church held crafting activities for members of the community today, as our Nicole Gruber was on the scene for the sewing session.
I'm getting there.
Sewing with Grace is an event for those who enjoy sewing, crafts, and spending time with their community. The event ran from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. today, and volunteers were happy to see people come out.
Just out of the necessity that a lot of us felt like we needed a safe place to come and do some crafting, whatever, and here it is. Here we are, a year and a half later, still going strong.
As people spend their time making creations, one volunteer hosts a Quilt As You Go demo for those wanting to improve their skills. Some members feel it's a safe space for taking time for themselves.
Probably hanging out with all of the community members and just taking some space for myself.
When we're at our table, we can take our mask off and work. When we're up walking around, we put our mask back on. They've got cleaning for the tables and everything, so it's a complete safe place to come and just have fun.
Along with Sewing with Grace, the church offers Outreach Pantry Closet on Thursdays at 1 o'clock for those in the community that just need a little extra support and food over the week. And this happens once a week, and they offer everything from big boxes for families to smaller individual items for just people that need a little extra help. The food provided is donations from local businesses and individuals. The entire staff is made up of volunteers wanting to help the community. All programs can be found on their website, and any questions can be answered by calling the church. For Primetime Local News, I'm Nicole Gruber.
Earlier this week, the CKSA launched their Make Some Noise for Mental Health campaign. From January 17th to February 13th, the mission is to promote mental health awareness and reduce stigma.
right now, especially with COVID and having a really cold Christmas time, there's a lot of anxiety amongst a lot of students, a lot of programs. The biggest piece about it is just raising awareness around mental health and how it impacts everybody.
The campaign initially started at SAIT in Calgary back in 2015. Now 17 post-secondaries participate across Alberta and Saskatchewan communities.
So let's make some noise.
So let's make some noise.
So let's make some noise.
So let's make some noise for mental health.
In past years, student athletes talked about how you could make some noise. The 2022 campaign wants participants to creatively demonstrate how you can make noise. Now we'll check in with Jasmine King once again for your second look at weather.
Thank you very much, Tate. Yes, taking another look at your weather forecast, we're going to take a look first of all at the central regions of both Alberta and Saskatchewan. So looking now on the Alberta side, we can see 3 in Edmonton, 6 in both Red Deer and Rocky Mountain House, 7 in Edson, and then Whitecourt and Athabasca are both at -1. And we still are at -7 here in the border city. And now Meadow Lake is at 14. Prince Albert is at -15. North Battleford is at -13. And Saskatoon is at -8. And looking into the northern parts of our provinces, Buffalo Narrows and La Loche are both sitting at -19 degrees. La Ronge is at -14. South End is down at -19, which is actually the coldest spot in Saskatchewan. And then Flin Flon and Stony Rapids, as well as Uranium City, are at -17 degrees. And looking over to the Alberta side, we can see that they have a bit of those warmer temperatures. Grand Prairie is at 4, Peace River at 3, and Slave Lake at 2, and then High Level is at -13, where Fort McMurray is at -10. And looking into those south, that warmer weather continues down there. Lethbridge is at 8, Medicine Hat at 3, Calgary is up at 9 degrees, and then Banff is at -3. And on the Saskatchewan side, we can see they are in those minus teens as we get further into the east part of the province. Regina and Estevan are both at -14. Yorkton is at -18, and then Swift Current and Moose Jaw are at -5. But as we look into your national forecast, we can see again as we move further east into our country, it does get colder. Winnipeg is at -22 currently. Quebec City is at -18, where Toronto is at -14. St. John's is a bit warmer though at 7 degrees, where Halifax is at -3. And on the western part of our country, Vancouver is up at 9 degrees. So another warm day in Vancouver. I'm sure we would like that here, but we're getting there slowly. And then Whitehorse at -9, and Yellowknife is at -23 currently with some snow. But as we look into your overnight temperatures for places across the region, we don't have that freezing cold warning anymore. So I'm pretty sure a lot of us are glad about that, but we still have that freezing rain warning that will be happening overnight tonight throughout most of these areas and more places around the Lloydminster region. We can see that in Meadow Lake overnight, as well as Unity and Paradise Hill. But as we look into your 7-day forecast, like I mentioned, tomorrow our high is -8 degrees, so it's almost one of the coldest spots that we're going to see throughout the next week. -3 on Saturday, again with that snow, and we can see that snow carrying on into Monday with that 60% chance. But -11 is the high there with that mix of sun and cloud. And then as we head further on into next week, we are getting back down to those minus temperatures once again with that mix of sun and cloud throughout. But that's another look at your weather forecast, and we'll have more news coming up after the break.
So with both the Cargill plant at High River and the JBS plant at Brooks having COVID outbreaks, how is that going to affect the packing industry for both Alberta and Saskatchewan and Western Canada as a whole?
What's happening so far that we're seeing because of the impact of the COVID in the plants, they can't predict from day to day how many people are going to be off work, how many people. I guess when the people don't show up to work, and I did hear a number last week that one of the plants had 700 people in one day not show up because of COVID symptoms. So what happens is the chain speed has to slow down. They're not able to slaughter as many cattle in a day as they have booked. And in a lot of cases, what's happening is they're calling the feedlots and making them take their slaughter cattle back that they had booked, or telling them they can't bring them that day. So the impact that it has on the industry as a whole is it goes from the feedlot. That feedlot is planning on emptying a pen of slaughter cattle that day, and their plans before that was to fill it with feeder cattle. So what happens is when they don't have anywhere to take the feeder cattle, the price of the feeders have to come down as well when they don't have a spot to put them.
What are the impacts on beef prices that you kind of mentioned already that these plants going down are going to have to affect the already slightly weaker market that beef industry is currently battling?
Well, since the 1st of January, to say the prices are lower, we wouldn't be further from the truth. The price of the feeder cattle actually has been very strong. And that's generally every year in January, it starts off quite high because you've gone 3 or 4 weeks where there's been no replacement cattle sell through the Christmas break, and the slaughter cattle have continued to move. So there is pen space, but we did get completely bombarded with feeder cattle here since about January the 4th to this week. We have seen huge numbers. And what that has done is it has filled those pens that were opened up. But with the COVID affecting some of these feedlots not being able to slaughter their fat cattle, going forward is where we could see there be a bigger issue with the price of feeder cattle. But that being said, we did move record numbers of feeder cattle because of the drought from July to December. So saving grace for the people raising the replacement cattle is that there were so many already moved that going forward, we probably are going to be okay just because there were so many already moved.
And then Shannon, what are the potential impacts that these outbreaks and the lower beef prices, what are they going to have on the consumer in the grocery store? How is that going to affect the price of beef there at the grocery stores?
Well, when it comes to trying to figure out, what the packers really can do, there's none of us are ever going to be able to get our thumb on it. One thing that was said to me last week was they dropped the price on the rail of the fat cattle down from $278 to $255 in 1 week, but yet the price of beef going out the other end, they had inflated the price because they weren't able to slaughter as many, so they dropped the price because the fat cattle are backed up. They can do that to the feedlot, but to the consumer going out the other end, there's less supply, so they can inflate the price. And it's just seems to be ongoing in the beef industry, and it has for generations. And I guess it's something that we just got to live with. It's the old supply and demand.
And these lower beef prices, Shannon, how are they going to affect beef producers in terms of their input costs?
Yeah, we are at an all-time record high for cost of gain on cattle, and that is impacting the feedlots and the producers all the way through. A lot of guys are dumping their calves right now way lighter than they would normally like to, just for the plain and simple fact they don't have any feed left to feed them, so they have to sell them.
Thank you so much for this interview, Shannon, and hopefully maybe we will talk again soon.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Have a good day.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
I'm joined here now with author Gregory Eric Phillips. Now, for our viewers who may not know too much about you, I'll just get you to go a little bit into your background.
So I'm the author of A Season in Lights. This is my latest novel, along with two other novels that came prior. And This novel is based on a story about a dancer and a piano player working off Broadway in New York City, which is something that's in my background. I'm also both a dancer and a piano player, and have done a little bit of performing off Broadway myself in New York. I currently live in Seattle, Washington. So it was a very personal book for me to write, and I was able to put a lot of my own sort of experiences in there. And so that was just a really fun project.
And speaking of your book, A Season in Lights, it recently got awarded Book of the Year from the Write Review. But just what did it mean to you to see that your book was being praised and recognized?
So that was actually the second major award that it's won. Earlier in 2021, it won the grand prize in the Somerset Awards, and then it just last week, or maybe even this week, just a few days ago, was named the Book of the Year by the Write Review. When something like that happens to me as an artist, that's just so incredibly validating. Because when you create art, there's some vulnerability that goes into that too, because you put your soul into your book, and you don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know if readers are going to like it, or if reviewers are going to accept what you had to say. And so those sorts of awards, or just nice reviews from readers as well, it just goes a long way to me as an artist to validate what I poured my heart into.
Now, speaking of the background of this book does talk about two different pandemics. So just why did you think it was so important to talk about this? Because it is still affecting us all, but it may be an angle that people may not know about.
Yeah, great question. So I had completed the book, a version of the book, long before COVID was something we were aware of, well, before it existed. And the book has sort of two narratives. One is in present day New York City, one is in the 1980s in New York City. And the 1980s section touches on the AIDS crisis and how that especially affected the artistic community. So then the book was done, and March 2020 happens. Broadway is shut down. The pandemic is in full force. And as a performing artist myself, my heart just broke for so many friends I know, both in Seattle and New York City, whose careers were in some cases ended by the pandemic. That it changes everything for them, and their entire identities are up in the air. So I thought, wow, that's something I'd really like to explore in fiction. And then the light bulb moment was, I have this manuscript that's done about performing artists in New York City. So I wrote a complete new final third of the book. And I wrote it literally as events were playing out in March of 2020, which was a very unique experience as an author, because you're usually writing about things in the past. So I feel like then the final version of the book contains a lot of that uncertainty that we all felt at the beginning of the pandemic, because the characters have no idea what's going to happen, and neither did I. So, and then the parallels between COVID today and AIDS in the 1980s was not an intentional thing when I started out writing it. It happened, and it was organic. And I think it brought this book to a higher level than it would have been if I'd published it before the pandemic.
Yeah, I really think this is just a great story to tell. And, since we still are in those uncertain times, is there anything you would want readers to take away from your book?
First, seeing how it affects other people that you may not understand. There's a scene toward the end of the book where the piano player kind of goes off on what's happening, because to treat the pandemic with what we do collectively as a society, and then to see how it affects these individuals, I think that's something that I really wanted to show in this book, because it affects all individuals in a different way. But also, I feel like there's a lot of hope in the ending, even though it's a dark time. And that's ultimately what I want to convey with all of my novels, is just the hope in the human spirit to rise above these tragedies.
If anyone is looking to read the book or just find out more about you, where should they go?
My website is GregoryEricPhillips.com, and Eric is spelled E-R-I-C-H, so you have to make sure that that's right. You can also just search for A Season in Lights on Amazon or your local bookstore. It's available pretty much wherever books are sold. The audiobook just came out as well, so it's available through all those channels. You can also find me on Facebook. Again, it's GregoryEricPhillips.com, and I'll put, or it's Facebook, Gregory Eric Phillips. So I'll put my updates there as well.
Thank you so much for your time today, Gregory.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That is all the time we have right now, but if you missed out on anything, we have some more news coming up in the next hour. But for now, thanks for watching.